Hello everyone! About a week ago, Blizzard released a new short story on the WoW website called Apocrypha. I thought it was a nice short story which gave some insight to the history of, for example, High Sage Viryx, you have Rashad in there, and even Iskar. I'll summarize the story in this video since a few of you have requested it, but I can highly recommend to check it out for yourself and read it for free on the WoW website. I'll place a link in the description, but if you're not interested in reading the story for yourself, then sit down and let's talk about the story. It all begins with Rashad, who's telling a story to a high uncorrupted arakkoa and a corrupted outcast arakkoa. It takes place after the events within the Spires of Arak, so after we've taken care of the Adherents of Rukhmar, we've taken care of High Sage Viryx, and now the arakkoa, they're trying to shape a new future. Both corrupted and uncorrupted arakkoa, they're working together in the Order of the Awakened, which claims to seek a peaceful new era for the arakkoa, and they seek the knowledge of the Apocrypha in order to bring this about. You might have actually seen the members of the Order in Ashran, where they're exchanging gear for Apocrypha crystals. Rashad had sent people to search for Iskar, since Iskar's been missing for a while, and as they're looking for him, he tells the history of Viryx and Iskar. Once, Iskar and Viryx, they were cluster brother and sister, which means that Iskar was not always a corrupted arakkoa. Viryx was very beautiful for her kind, she was talented, she was extremely interested in the ancient civilization of the Apocrypha, and she never really followed the rules. Iskar usually took the punishment for her, as she broke the rules, he would take the punishment. Since their high sage Zelkir, he was very lenient with Viryx, and by punishing Iskar, they tried to teach her responsibility. Viryx was very stubborn though, she still didn't obey the rules, and as they were exterminating the local ravagers as punishment, they saw an arakkoa heading towards Akras. Today was the day that marked the start of Rukhmar's grace, a time of year where the sun was at its highest and the days were long and bright. All adherents were required to attend the ceremony and perform certain rites, so this arakkoa, like them, he shouldn't even be here. Iskar wanted to let it be and wanted to go to the ceremony, since he didn't want to be punished again, but Viryx didn't listen. She followed the arakkoa into the village, and she heard him speak the words, "Shadows gather.
When the raven swallows the day."
A voice of an outcast replied. This arakkoa was meeting with Rashad himself, and Rashad, he was about to give him a very special scroll. This scroll would reveal the truth, but before he could, Viryx crashed down from the tree, disturbed their meeting, and caused the strange arakkoa to flee. He ran straight into the hands of 4 blade talons that had been hunting him, and it turns out that this arakkoa, he was actually Ikis, the boss of Sephek Halls in our reality, and one of the guys you killed while questing through the Spires of Arak. The guards capture Ikis, and now they're all in big trouble. Ikis is bound and gagged and placed in a magical cage high up in the air before his final verdict. The magic around the cage makes it so that the prisoner inside can't feel the light. They're placed high up there to be close to Rukhmar's grace, yet they can't really touch it. Most go mad while being imprisoned like this, tearing out their own feathers and whatnot, but Ikis survived to an even worse fate. Viryx and Iskar, they were also punished for not showing up for the ceremony, following Ikis into the village. Now Viryx, she was sentenced to isolation in her own roost, while Iskar received the whip, as he had so many times before. He promised himself that he would take the punishment with dignity, similar to how he had promised himself that before, but again, the whip causes him to shriek in agonizing pain. After the beating had stopped, High Sage Zelkir tells Iskar that he has a job for him. You need to understand that the High Sage, he's the voice of Rukhmar herself, the highest amongst them, so their will is word. He tells Iskar to keep a close eye on Viryx and report back to him as to what she's doing. Normally clutch brothers and sisters, they always keep an eye on each other. That's the whole reason behind it, so that one succeeds, both of them succeeds, and when one fails, both of them are punished. Keeping a close eye on her like that though, that seems to go a little beyond that, and Iskar wonders if he's betraying Viryx by spying on her. Nonetheless, the will of the High Sage, it can't be disputed, so Iskar agrees to spy on his sister. The ultimate punishment for betraying his own kind, for interacting with the outcast arakkoa, is being turned into an outcast yourself. Ikis is brought before his people and they clip his wings with a blade. Ikis knew that if he would be caught, that this would be the punishment, so what could be worth to risk it all? What could be worth it to risk his ability to fly? And the answer to that would be the truth. The truth of the arakkoa's history, of the history behind the Outcast and the Adherents of Rukhmar. The truth of their former king Terokk. Iskar was meeting with Rashad to receive a scroll that tells the true tale of their king. Iskar told Viryx about this before he was taken away, and from that moment on, she was obsessed with finding out the truth. She'd spend her time in the library researching her people's history. She found it strange that all of the recollections, some 100 years apart from each other, they all told the same exact tale. It seemed like the history was fabricated somehow, and she felt the desperate need of finding out the truth. As promised, Iskar, he'd been following Viryx, and he was summoned before their High Sage Zelkir to make his report. But strangely enough, Iskar found the courage and strength to lie to the voice of Rukhmar. He lies to Zelkir and tells him that Viryx was doing well, that she had been reformed and spent her time reciting prayers to Rukhmar. Not even Iskar himself understood where their strength was coming from, but the High Sage seemed to believe him and told him to continue watching Viryx. In the meantime, Viryx, she'd gone even further within her obsession, even though Iskar tried to make her stop. She decided to travel to view Akras herself, and she spoke the words, "Shadows gather
when the raven swallows the day."
Rashad showed up, and after threatening each other for a bit, he decides to hand over the scroll. He realizes that Viryx is a knowledge seeker, so she gets to know the truth. Iskar shows up outside the hut, again telling Viryx that she shouldn't be doing this, that she's risking everything for something she's not even sure about what it is. As he spoke, Viryx finally realized what she'd been doing, and fear and disgust took its place over the excitement she had felt earlier. Back in Viryx's roost, they read the scroll and they found out about the real history behind Terokk and the Adherents.
Long ago, a blood-mane pride lord commanded his hunters to bring him 10,000 arakkoa feathers. Eager for the glory of battle, the young chieftain had hoped to incite a war with the arakkoa. But the Talon King came alone, and what ensued was not a war, it was a slaughter. With a sweep of his wings, he cut down even the strongest of the bloodmane like so many blades of grass. Their pride lord was fierce, but he was no match for Terokk. Satisfied that his message was clear, the Talon King left the bloodmane to pick up the pieces of their broken tribe. The Talon King's own sages betrayed him. Terokk and his allies were cast into the pools. Their cursed blood seared his flesh and tore at his mind. As he withered, Terokk had but one concern: his daughter Viryx. Seeing her broken body, Terokk despaired. He surrendered to the creeping darkness. But in that darkness, something found him. A strange power filled the Talon King. A presence urged him on.
What are we without the sky?
The strongest of his gods clung to sanity, and when the Talon King called, they answered. A strange orb peeked out from the wastes. Gazing into it, Terokk met the being that had saved him. The Raven God, Anzu, gifted Terokk and his gods with dark powers. In time, they would be known as Talon Priests. Together they would build Sketis and protect the unwanted children of Rukhmar.
Terokk had been a great king for the arakkoa, but his adherents, they lusted for more power and more prestige. They overthrew Terokk, they cast him, his followers and even his daughter, they cast them all out into the blood of Sepha. You've probably seen his history in game, how the king's daughter did not survive the fall, how he found a voice in the darkness, which led him and those strong enough to become outcast but also survive. This history went against everything Viryx and the other arakkoa were told. Their history describes Terokk as a criminal, a tyrant who ruled his people during a time of misery, and only when the brave adherents rose up, they managed to end this tragic era. Viryx now had her answers, and she realized that if the others would find out, it would change everything. She had walked amongst the village of the Outcasts, and she didn't want her life to change. She decided that the best course of action was to burn the scroll and hide the truth forever. Iskar had quite the opposite reaction. To him, knowing the truth was better than being deceived, and he tried to stop Viryx from burning the scroll, but she was able to overpower him, and all that remained of the scrolls was nothing but ash. Outside of her window, Viryx saw a handful of Kaliri watching them, and she found this very odd. She had never seen them so focused before, and an icy apprehension twisted her stomach. Moments later, her door was kicked in, and the High Sage himself showed up. He had the gift to use the Kaliri to see through their eyes, and this gift was very useful. He was able to see all that happened, and the blade talents that came with him, they bound Ickis and took him away. The High Sage explained that he had high hopes for Viryx, that he saw potential in her to become something great within their order. Her search for knowledge was not a big issue, since she would become familiar with more of their secrets as she rose up in their ranks. She had shown that her way of life was more important than telling everyone the truth, so that was not an issue, although Iskar had shown a different path. However, her curiosity, her restlessness, her rebellion, that was something they had to fix. Viryx too was bound, and a blinding hood was slipped over her eyes. For the next few days, weeks, maybe a lifetime, all that Viryx knew was the darkness. When finally Zelkir showed up, he said nothing, but he took her by the hand and he led her through the catacombs beneath the Grand Spire. When Viryx felt the sun, all she wanted to do was embrace it and do nothing but enjoy the light. Before that moment though, before that could happen, she first had to make a choice. In front of her was the bound Iskar, and the High Sage, he told her the choice. He told her, will you live in light or will you live in shadow? Viryx stepped forward, staff in hand. Iskar stared back at her. He did not move. He did not make a sound. His eyes held not a trace of fear, only anger, cold and brittle. She placed the blade under his outstretched right arm, and she made her choice. That's the history between Viryx and Iskar. She would move on to become a High Sage herself, move forward with her studies into the Apocryphal society, and she would be the one to deal massive damage and devastation to the Outcasts. Iskar would be turned into a corrupted arakkoa. He would join the Outcasts and rise up within their ranks and would eventually become their leader. When we showed up in the Spires of Arak, we teamed up with the arakkoa Outcast and we brought down Viryx, opening up the way for a, hopefully, brightful future for both the corrupted and the uncorrupted arakkoa. At the end of the story, Rashad is informed that the scouts who were sent to find Iskar, they're all dead. They were killed by Iskar himself, and more are continuing to search for him. Rashad had always wondered if the future was enough for Iskar, or if his lust for power and vengeance would be undying. It seems like the former is true, but that enters the realm of spoilers for patch 6.2. This, however, is the story as described within the short story, and for those that don't want any spoilers for patch 6.2, please turn off the video right now, and thank you very much for joining me once again. For those that are sticking around, in patch 6.2 we will join Rashad and discover what happened to Iskar.
Percy and I will travel on ahead. When you're ready to join us, speak with your flight master. What's this? This book looks familiar. Interesting. Come to Tanan, assist me, and I will return you to the skies.
Drink, and you will fly once more.
This feeling! My wings are strong again! I am forever yours, my master.
Go, prepare an army of your kind. They too will serve the Legion.
Oh, I've seen enough. Iskar is lost to us. He has traded one curse for another.
The full details as to how this all went down, they're still unclear to me, but the end result is that Iskar, he was lured to Tana jungle and there he exchanged one curse for another. Gul'dan offers him a sip of the demon juice, and this does indeed give Iskar his wings back, but it also makes him a slave to the Legion. He's one of the bosses within Hellfire Citadel, and we'll have to go in and take down Shadow Lord Iskar ourselves. I haven't done any testing on the PTR, I want to keep it a surprise for myself, although I probably know all the spoilers by now. But if you want to check out the fight for yourself, I'll place a link in the description and probably also in the video. This link will take you to a video made by Fatboss in which they show you the fight in greater detail and they'll talk about the mechanics. All in all, I thought that this was a very nice short story. I found it well written, it really gripped me and it told a very nice story. It gave a bit more insight to the history of the arakkoas and it gives a bit more depth to what we're actually doing within the game. I hope you enjoyed this short video. Like I said, all the links are down below in the description. Links to the Fatboss video, links to relative lore videos, all of that can be found down below. Thank you very much for watching once again everyone. Subscribe if you like my videos. And until next time guys, see ya!